Hey, everyone, you ever get that like nagging feeling of anxiety? You know what I mean?
Oh, for
And
sure.
you wonder, like, is this just, normal everyday stuff, or is this something I should, like, actually do something about?
Right.
Well, today we're going to deep dive into anxiety.
Yeah.
We're going to be checking out a blog post by Richard Scott, an anxiety specialist over at Mynd.works, and really get his take on this whole thing.
I was reading that blog post, and one of the things that really stood out to me was how he like normalizes anxiety.
Yeah.
Doesn't make it this big scary thing.
Right.
He even says it's like our internal alarm system.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But he doesn't stop there, right? Like he also points out that it's not just about whether you have anxiety. It's like, how bad is it? How long does it stick around?
Exactly. It's about the intensity, how long it lasts,
Yeah.
and what kind of impact it has on your life.
Yeah.
Like if you think about those butterflies you get before a big presentation,
Oh, yeah.
that's your fight or flight response. Yeah, it's happening in your nervous system. It's this primal reaction to protect you from danger.
Hmm.
So your brain, it's sensing a threat. Maybe a real threat, maybe not.
Right.
But either way, it floods your body with hormones, things like adrenaline and cortisol.
Oh, wow.
And then all these physical changes start happening. Like your heart rate goes up, you start breathing faster, your muscles tense up.
So it's like, even though anxiety feels really bad, sometimes it's actually our body trying to protect us.
Yeah.
Huh. That's actually pretty cool when you think about it that way. Richard actually uses this analogy of a smoke detector in his blog post.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes it goes off, for a real fire, and other times, well, it's just burnt toast.
That's a great analogy. It really shows that not all anxiety is like, created equal. So how do we know when it's a real problem? When that alarm's going off for a reason?
Well, Richard lays out some red flags.
No.
Feeling anxious almost every day, even when there's nothing to really be anxious about. Avoiding things that you used to enjoy.
Right.
Physical symptoms like a racing heart or trouble sleeping.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I've definitely experienced all of those.
Yeah, me too. And here's one that I thought was really interesting. He talks about anxiety affecting your relationships.
Hmm.
If you're always on edge, that can really change how you interact with the people you care about.
Absolutely. You bring that energy into everything you do.
Exactly. And he actually talks about different kinds of therapy that can help us manage anxiety.
Yeah, he really gets into the different types of therapy and why some might be more effective for certain people than others.
Like he talks about cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, as I guess the cool kids call it.
CBT?
What is that exactly?
Well, CBT is all about like recognizing those thought patterns.
Yeah.
The negative ones, the ones that feed your anxiety,
Hmm.
and then learning how to challenge those thoughts and chase them.
Mm.
It's like training your brain to look at things in a more balanced way,
Hmm.
more realistic.
It's like you're like updating the software of your mind.
Exactly. Yeah.
I like that. He also talks about mindfulness-based therapies. What's that all about?
So mindfulness is about being present in the moment without judgment. It's like hitting the pause button on those racing thoughts, just noticing your breath, your body, your surroundings. It's like a little mini vacation for your mind.
Ooh, sign me up. I could use some mini vacations.
Right.
What else? What else does he talk about?
Well, he also mentions exposure therapy.
Exposure therapy. What's that?
Yeah. So that's about gradually facing your fears, but in a safe and controlled environment. The idea is that by confronting the things that trigger your anxiety over and over again, you can eventually reduce, how much power they have over you.
So it's like dipping your toe in a cold pool instead of just jumping in.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh.
Little at a time.
And then you get used to it. Oh, and he even talks about group therapy.
Oh, yeah. The power of the group.
The power of the group. What's so good about group therapy?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that it reminds you that you're not alone in this.
Hmm.
Sharing your experiences with others who get it, who understand what you're going through, that can be so powerful.
It's like realizing you're not the only one with a quirky smoke detector.
Right.
Okay, so one of the things that really jumped out at me in this blog post were the self-assessment questions. Like he has us ask ourselves, is my anxiety getting in the way of my daily life, or am I avoiding things that I used to like doing?
Those are really good questions. I mean, they make you really stop and think. Taking an honest look at how anxiety is affecting you.
Yeah.
He even suggests taking an anxiety assessment online, which, could be really helpful if you're listening and thinking, maybe this is something I should look into.
Right, right. So let's say you've read the blog, you've asked yourself those tough questions, and you're thinking, okay, maybe therapy is something I should try. what can you expect? Like, how can therapy actually help you manage that anxiety?
Good question. Well, it's not like therapy is going to like make your anxiety disappear. It's more like, you learn to work with it.
Yeah.
He talks about this process like step by step,
Okay.
starting with figuring out what your triggers are. What are the things that really set off your anxiety?
Like specific situations
Yeah.
or even like thoughts.
Exactly. He even uses this like detective analogy. You got to gather clues and look for patterns.
Hmm. I like that. Be an anxiety detective.
Right. Figure out what's setting off those alarm bells.
It's right.
And then once you know what your triggers are, you can start to come up with ways to cope.
Okay.
He talks about things like deep breathing exercises or that progressive muscle relaxation. Have you ever tried any of those?
I've definitely tried like deep breathing, but sometimes it feels a little, I don't know, too simple. Like, is that really gonna work?
I get that, but there's actually a lot of science behind it. When you do those deep, slow breaths, it tells your nervous system to like chill out. It's
Hmm.
like, putting the brakes on that whole fight or flight response.
Okay.
He even recommends this specific technique. It's called box breathing.
Box breathing.
Yeah, you breathe in for a count of 4, hold it for 4, breathe out for 4, hold it for 4.
Huh.
Easy to remember, and it really can help calm you down.
Okay, I'm putting that on my list to try. Box breathing. What else?
We also talks about challenging negative thoughts. You know those automatic negative thoughts that just pop into your head?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
It's like he's telling us not to believe everything we think.
That's good advice.
Right. Therapy can help you learn to recognize those unhelpful thoughts, challenge them, and replace them with something more balanced, more realistic.
So it's not like you just pretend those thoughts aren't there.
No.
It's more like you learn to like talk back to them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Put them in their place.
And, another thing is building confidence.
Confidence.
Yeah. He talks about how therapy can help you gradually face those fears,
Okay.
And as you do that, you start to feel more confident, more able to handle those tough situations.
I really connected with that part of the blog post because it's like you realize you can do more than you think you can.
Yeah.
And it's not about like getting rid of anxiety altogether. It's about, feeling more in control.
Right. It's about not letting anxiety run the show.
Going to therapy, that's not a sign of weakness.
Oh, for
It's actually, it's a sign of strength. It means you're taking care of yourself.
exactly. Like, if you had a physical health problem, you'd go to the doctor, right?
Right.
There's no shame in getting help from a professional. In fact, it's often the best thing you can do for yourself.
That's a really good point. So as we start to wrap up our deep dive into Richard Scott's blog post, what do you think is the most important thing for our listeners to take away from this?
I think the big takeaway is that anxiety, it's not like a one-size-fits-all thing.
Yeah.
We all experience it to some degree, right?
Yeah.
And it's not always a bad thing. It's just when it starts messing with your life, your relationships, how you feel overall,
Yeah.
that's when it becomes a problem. But the good news is you don't have to, tough it out on your own.
Right.
There are things that can help,
Yeah.
like therapy.
And I think what I really like is that he gives you like permission to take charge of your anxiety. He doesn't just tell you what to do. He encourages you to be curious about it.
Right.
Ask yourself those tough questions like we talked about and explore different options.
He even talks about thinking of anxiety as like a messenger,
Right.
like a signal that something might be off in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're pushing yourself too hard, or maybe you're not setting good boundaries, or maybe you're just not taking care of yourself.
Right.
But by listening to that signal and doing something about the underlying issues,
Yeah.
that's how you start to get a handle on anxiety.
I like that way of thinking about it. So if you're listening to this and you feel like anxiety is holding you back,
Yeah.
just remember you're not alone. Richard Scott said it best.
You don't have to face it alone.
Think of this deep dive as like a starting point,
Yeah.
a chance to, check in with yourself about your anxiety. Maybe you can manage it with some of the things we talked about today, or maybe it's time to talk to a professional.
It's all about finding what works for you.
And just remember, taking care of your mental health, well, that's a sign of strength.
Absolutely.
So keep learning, keep exploring, and keep taking care. Until next time on The Deep Dive.